Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. US President Donald Trump signs an executive order banning transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. This is his latest move targeting transgender people since returning to office. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to skip the G20 talks this month in South Africa, accusing the host government of an anti-American agenda. This just days after US President Donald Trump halted aid for South Africa over alleged land confiscations. A Ukrainian drone hits a Russian border village in the Belgorod region, killing 2 teenage girls and a man, as per Russian authorities. A Tunisian court sentences 41 people to prison for conspiring against the state's national security. Those sentenced include the main opposition leader and a former prime minister, as well as journalists and bloggers. And January 2025 has been declared the world's warmest January on record, despite predictions of a slightly cooler year. European scientists now say that global warming is accelerating faster than predicted. Hello and welcome. We start with updates coming in from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The M23 rebels have launched a fresh offensive along with Rwandan forces in DRC's mineral-rich east. Days after declaring a unilateral ceasefire, intense clashes broke out yesterday as the M23 rebels and the Rwandan troops seized a mining town in the region, as per reports. They have captured the town of Nyabibwe in the South Kivu province, now around 100 kilometers away from the provincial capital of Bukavu and around 70 kilometers away from the nearest airport. Earlier, the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels captured Goma, the capital of North Kivu province and the largest city in the mineral-rich east. They had also vowed to march all the way to the capital Kinshasa. However, later said that they have no intent to seize further territory as they declared a ceasefire. The DRC now says that the renewed fighting is proof that the unilateral ceasefire was in fact a ploy. In more than 3 years of fighting between the Rwanda-backed group and the Congolese army, half a dozen ceasefires and truces have been declared before being unceremoniously broken. The latest escalation comes just days before the Rwandan and Congolese presidents are due to attend a crisis summit this weekend. Rwandan President Paul Kagame says his country is taking a defensive posture against the rival ethnic militia supported by the DRC. However, Kigali is facing an intense public pressure to withdraw support for the rebels, as he is also being accused of looting minerals from the DRC. Meanwhile, a DRC military court has issued an international arrest warrant against the leader of a rebel alliance. That includes the M23 rebels for war crimes and treason. The warrant has been issued for Colonel Nanga, who in 2018 orchestrated the heavily criticized vote that handed President Felix Tshisekedi power. Today, he is the face of rebel coalition that are fighting to oust Tshisekedi. Nanga also said that the rebels will march to Kinshasa to quote-unquote liberate the capital. Though M23 rebels captured Goma in 2012 as well, this is the first time it seems they want to form a government. They have so far defeated thousands of foreign mercenaries hired by the DRC government. Thousands of peacekeeping forces from several African nations still remain on the ground. Many of them have died in the clashes, raising concerns of a wider regional conflict. As a ceasefire was declared, Malawi ordered to withdraw its troops, but violence has returned to the DRC. As per the United Nations, around 3,000 people have lost their lives in the clashes since last week. Thousands more have been displaced. In North Kivu's captured capital of Goma, there are reports of hundreds of women being raped and burned alive after a prison was set on fire. Hospitals have been overwhelmed and have also come in the line of fire during the fighting. Shells and bombs have torn through the walls.
We have experienced infrastructure destruction. Shells or bombs fell on the roof of the neonatal unit, damaging the solar panels and the roof itself. Additionally, at Clinic C, one of the rooms also suffered roof damage. Inside the room, we found bullets or shrapnel that had destroyed the walls. If someone had been there, they would have died.
In South Kivu's capital of Bukavu, which now appears to be the next big target for the Rwanda-backed rebels, hundreds of residents gathered and prayed for peace.
This is our role to play. We have already advocated, taken action, and supported displaced people. Now we add prayer to these efforts like Esther, like the Virgin Mary. We kneel together, united, to ask the Lord to touch the hearts of our leaders, Rwandan leaders, and all national and international leaders. We believe God will hear us because nothing is impossible for Him, especially now that we have set aside our divisions to come together.
Was the M23's declaration of a ceasefire a ploy? And will it further weaken the DRC in the fighting? Now, for more on this, we have with us Vincent Roger, who is the head of political risk for Africa at Control Risks, joining us live from Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Alison, for having me.
Now, given the apparent violation of the M23's unilateral ceasefire and the seizure of a mining town in South Kivu, how do you assess the current balance of power on the ground? And what does this suggest about the DRC government's capacity to respond effectively?
Well, it's pretty clear by now that this declaration of ceasefire really wasn't one at all, and that if anything, he may have been intended to buy a bit of time or to buy a little bit of goodwill. As you've mentioned, we have an international summit of East African and Southern African leaders coming out at the end of this week. So perhaps the ceasefire was a little bit of a ploy, as you said, to gain some goodwill. But what's clear with the latest advance and the latest capture of Nyabibwe, an important trading hub on the road between Goma and Bukavu, is that the M23 still has, for now, the military upper hand. And we have heard reports, even in the last 24 hours, that the Congolese army has further retreated closer to Bukavu, and the next big site and big targets for fighting will likely be Kavumu Airport. So there's the main airport servicing Bukavu, but also a major military facility for the DRC authorities. At the moment, it looks like the M23 rebels have the upper hand, even though the FARDC are getting some support from Burundi. And it's hard to say, where it will end, but for clear, they are the leading power at the moment.
What role, both overt and covert, do the neighboring countries, particularly Rwanda, play in this renewed offensive? And how might the regional and international diplomacy address these cross-border tensions that are clearly fueling the conflict?
Well, you have a growing body of evidence, pretty clear now, that points to very strong Rwandan support for the M23, even though Rwanda has always declined to acknowledge it. So at the beginning, you do have that foreign dynamic. What I think is important to mention over the last few weeks is we've also seen that conflict draw in troops from Burundi on the government side. And we've also heard earlier this week additional military deployments from Uganda. So increasingly, we're looking at a potential threat of this drawing in the whole regional bloc and becoming a bit of a regional conflict, because you do have these backers on either side. That means, as you said, part of the resolution of that conflict definitely involves diplomacy at the state-to-state level between these parties, and resolving some pretty deep-seated animosity by now.
And Vincent, how is this renewed fighting likely to impact the civilian populations and local economies, especially in the mining areas? And in your view, what steps should be taken by both the DRC government and the international community in order to mitigate this humanitarian fallout?
Yeah, well, we've seen it with the fall of Goma, and as you alluded to in your report, it's been a pretty horrific humanitarian impact, both in terms of loss of life, overwhelmed hospitals, massive displacements of population. And as we see the conflict now moving towards Bukavu, we can only fear the same outcome. And throughout the places where the M23 is gradually conquering, we're seeing the same humanitarian toll in terms of displacement through the fighting. What can the international community do? Well, the immediate answer lies in a ceasefire and in getting a genuine ceasefire that sticks, that is endorsed by the different parties, and likely will involve some form of humanitarian corridors or an acceptance of humanitarian activities, because a lot of these activities have now been suspended or cut short by the fighting. We know that even about 2 weeks after the capture of Goma now, there are still pockets of the city where the humanitarian community cannot access. So it's more urgent than ever to get a pause in the fighting and to allow these humanitarian organizations to resume.
Right. Vincent, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights and analysis there.
Thank you.
Moving on to a key development that has stunned the whole world. It's US President Donald Trump's shocking announcement of his plans to take over Gaza and resettle Palestinians in other locations. Now, Trump has already proposed that Gazans be shifted to West Asian nations, particularly Jordan and Egypt. But now reports say other locations that are on Trump's mind could in fact be in Africa. As per Israeli media reports, the Trump administration is considering displacing Palestinians from Gaza to Morocco, as well as Puntland and Somaliland, which are semi-autonomous regions in Somalia. Trump shared his Gaza takeover plan during a press conference with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington. He said the U.S. would take over and own the territory after resettling its around 2 million residents to other nations. The U.S. would then undertake an extraordinary redevelopment plan that he claimed could turn the enclave into the Riviera of the Middle East. U.S. officials say Trump's plan does not include permanent resettle of Gazans, but a temporary relocation for redevelopment purposes. But the proposal has faced fierce condemnation, especially from the Arab world. However, the stance of Morocco, which is also a part of the Arab world, is not clear. Now, reports suggest that Morocco, along with Somaliland and Puntland, could consider Trump's proposal, as they all seek U.S. support for their vested interests. Let's take a look at them one by one. Morocco made some significant progress in boosting ties with the U.S. Trump's first term. Now, the Trump administration recognized Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara, which claims independence. In exchange, Morocco signed the Abraham Accords and normalized ties with Israel. Now, in his second term, Trump is expected to continue this support to strengthen his alliance with the North African country, which is also one of Washington's most important strategic allies outside NATO. Then comes Somaliland. It is Somalia's breakaway region that claims independence. No other nation backs its claim. However, the territory is reportedly eyeing recognition from the US under Donald Trump. As per reports, Republicans have been pushing for Somaliland's recognition, considering its strategic location. Now, Somaliland is also reportedly planning to grant the United States a strategic expanse of land along the Red Sea near the port city of Berbera for the establishment of a military base. Now, reports also suggest that Somaliland and Israel are also assessing possibilities of cooperation, as they have common interests in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea region. Then comes Puntland, which is also a semi-autonomous region of Somalia. However, unlike Somaliland, it does not seek recognition as an independent entity, but it operates as a functionally independent state amid a dispute over Somali constitutional changes. Just days ago, the US carried out airstrikes in the region targeting ISIS. It was Trump's first attack order in his second term. The attack eliminated a senior ISIS leader and several other terrorists, as per Trump. So these are the interests of the African regions mentioned in the report. Who could possibly take in Palestinians on Trump's orders? However, Washington is yet to formally confirm or deny the report. There are also concerns over the logistics and feasibility of such a relocation, and whether an entire population could be resettled in unfamiliar territories. And shifting our focus to the Sahel region, it looks like Chad has gotten a new partner to support its military after France pulled out its nearly 1,000 troops from the Central African country. Now, reports suggest that Turkey is set to assume the control of a military base in Chad that recently saw the departure of the French troops. Turkey is allegedly getting control of the Abache base, which is located in the eastern part of the Central African country. Now, reports indicate that in mid-January, an official agreement between Turkey and Chad granted Ankara the control of the Abache base. This was after extensive negotiations took place between Turkey's ambassador and the Chadian officials. Now, Ankara has reportedly also provided Chad with advanced Bayraktar drones that are known for their surveillance and precision strike capabilities. Additionally, Turkey has also deployed its drones near the Fayalaje base, which is located close to Chad's border with Libya in the north, and has stationed military advisors for Chad's assistance. Now, the alleged control of the base and deployment of drones comes as France loses its influence in the Central and Western African regions. Now, countries like Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Chad, and the Ivory Coast, which once hosted French troops to fight terrorism, have now asked Paris to withdraw its military personnel. Turkey, under the leadership of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, is seeing this as an opportunity to strengthen its military, diplomatic, and economic presence in the region. It is also looking to fill the void left by the French withdrawal. The control over the bases in Chad gives Ankara the opportunity to contribute to the stability in the region, which has long faced challenges owing to growing jihadist insurgency. Moreover, in recent years, Turkey has tried to increase its influence in the world's second-largest continent, amid growing competition from Russia, the UAE, and China. In terms of military partnership, it has sold attack drones to several African nations, including Chad, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Then Ankara has signed oil exploration deals with countries like Somalia and Senegal. It has also signed free trade agreements with countries like Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, and Mauritius. The country has also been playing a peacemaker role in the continent. It has brokered the Ethiopia-Somalia peace deal, while offered to mediate the Sudan-UAE rift and the DRC-Rwanda conflict. Moreover, Turkey has also invested heavily across Africa, with its direct investments crossing over $7 billion last year, while total trade is surpassing $35 billion. So, as the West loses its influence in the region, Is a new player emerging in Africa? And for our last story, let's shift our focus to Mozambique, where the leading opposition figure, Venancio Mondlane, who was at the center of months-long protests against the ruling Frelimo party, has decided to break ties with his own party, the Podemos. Mondlane has ditched the very same party which backed him in the October presidential elections last year. Mondlane has accused the Podemos party of violating a coalition agreement, while the Podemos party has denied those claims and has accused Mondlane of insulting their leadership. This emerging conflict has highlighted the deep divisions within the opposition in the East African country. Our next report gets you all the details.
In the East African country of Mozambique, a new conflict has emerged. The leading opposition figure, who protested against the ruling Frelimo party's victory in the October 2024 elections, has severed his ties with the political party that backed him. Venancio Mondlane, who came second in the presidential elections that extended Frelimo's nearly 50-year rule, has announced that he's ending ties with the Podemos party, with which he signed a coalition agreement in August 2024. In a statement signed by his legal advisor, Mondlane's office has accused Podemos of taking its parliamentary seats against the will of the people. It further said that their political struggle was for the salvation of Mozambique and not for the obsessive achievement of material goods or financial advantage. Mondlane's office also accused Podemos of doing nothing in the fight for justice and said it has distanced itself from the legitimate claims of the people. The office further accused the party of being insensitive and inflexible and added that the party was not worth the paper it had signed. Responding to the accusations, the Podemos party, which became the largest opposition party in Mozambique following the October elections, has reportedly refused to recognize the statement signed by Mondlane's legal advisor. The party, which was founded in 2019 by dissidents from Frelimo, has said it had particularly signed the coalition agreement with Mondlane and not his associates. It said the agreement was no longer valid as Mondlane had violated the confidentiality clause. The Podemos party further accused him of insulting and disrespecting its leader, Albino Forquilha. Now, Mozambique has seen widespread unrest following the elections in October 2024 that has resulted in the loss of hundreds of lives and destruction of property in the country. The opposition parties, led by Mondlane, have demonstrated against the ruling Frelimo, whose candidate Daniel Chapo was sworn in as the president in January. However, this emerging conflict between Mondlane and the Podemos party has highlighted the deep divisions within the country's opposition landscape. In recent weeks, Mondlane, who had rejected to join Daniel Chapo's government, had expressed his dissatisfaction with the Podemos party's actions, particularly that of the swearing in of the 43 members of parliament alongside Frelimo's legislators. Last week, he reportedly also said that he was looking to start a new political party. So, as this conflict between Mondlane and Podemos marks the end of a political alliance that had initially promised to bring together opposition forces against the Frelimo party's rule, what will the opposition landscape look like in Mozambique in the coming days?
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
We're calling the show Vantage. We hope you like what we've put together for you. Touted as the minimum defense from that video. India's neighbors were the first to send the special edition of Vantage live from the White House throughout the week. Yes, Hindu Mandir in we're on our way to Tel Aviv. Measure, but it's also the perfect way to drive.
I don't think
Prime Minister of Bhutan, Sherin Tagwe. Welcome to
60% of the world's
office. Prime Minister Modi did the iron.
We were actually
How are you doing? How do you like? It's been 1 year since that meeting. iron bars separate you from the outside. Out the vote efforts. Trump had, it says, and at $4.3 trillion, 4.3 300 billion by 2030. That's what we need to tackle climate change.